see, about 10 seconds. That'll work. Hey, everybody, guess what? It is October 5th. It's a Saturday, and it's 2019. I'm sorry about the little bit late. We had some technical issues. But, well, yeah. Ed's been visiting his favorite doctors multiple times, so he's not exactly in the best of health. But he's still here to give you guys information and everything, and so put on your socks and listen to what he's got to say.
Okay. Well, thank you, thank you everybody for joining. The whole point is about proper education compared to what all these other people are doing, and all these groups are charging you, and you're not getting nothing done, and it's so frustrating. That it's still rape, rob, and pillage. That's the Christian way of doing it. Christians have done that to the natives for hundreds of years. So, but yeah, and I'm still having issues. I'm back on oxygen again. I had to be run in the emergency room last night by ambulance because I basically stopped breathing, and so suffocating to death again. So, and they were able to get me back stable. But now they're talking that I'm looking at heart surgery without a question. So they put me on a list, so see if they can find me a new heart too. So that's an interesting thing. So it is one of those things, the way it is, what it is. So, what can you do? You can't get all paranoid and panic because it's life, that's the one thing. And when people sit there and do all this psychological trauma to them because these Democrats and these stupid, uneducated people out in the world telling people, oh, you need to feel this way, you need to know what this is, and it's like, those are mentally retarded people, mentally challenged people. Because when people tell you that you need to feel something or go through something that somebody else did, you can psychologically imagine, but you don't have to, put yourself through trauma. And that's the point. The Democrats have to do this to you because that's called democracy, rape, rob, and pillage. And, everybody keeps saying, we need to save our democracy. It just shows me how mentally retarded people really are. Because in democracy, you have no rights, period. End of story. Look it up. Start paying attention to what the law is, not what these idiots are telling you, like Nancy Pelosi and Feinstein and all these other ones out there. All they're doing is rape, robbing, and pillaging, and then they say, oh, we need to put you in a drug and alcohol program so they can make money, because remember, your senators and congressmen own these drug and alcohol programs. So, and then they write it off on a tax write-off, and that's the point that you need to learn, the structure of how they write it off. Okay, that is the one point that has to be, you guys got to start standing up, because these 501c3s, they're not reporting the income. It's the same thing that, what's her name? What was her name again? Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation. They don't report their incomes. And so this is the point, that you're supposed to report these people. And then it's your job to make sure that you report these people when they're making income. And that's what I'm doing. I'll have that up here shortly. Because the whole thing is proper education. Excuse me. I didn't get much sleep. I was in the emergency room all last night and this morning. And I finally ended up being stable. So the doctor says, well, we could cut you loose, At first, it was like, we could cut you loose or we could transfer you to Corvallis and you go sit there and figure out, if we're going to do surgery or not. And so seeing that, my one of my tests came back where it wasn't bad, so I was able to be let go, where I wasn't worried about, going at this point, but I'm still having severe breathing and oxygen level depletions. So it's just part of the way it is. So, but anyhow, we've been talking about, and I want to get back into this, police or private contractors. They're contractors. They're policy officers to the city, the county, the state. If you were in a mill or any government agency, and remember, most of your private corporations are definitely government agencies. Because anybody who's writing off on a 501c3 is a government agency. That means your doctor, lawyer, your preacher, 501c3s are government agencies. And the government, let's clarify what the government is called. The federal government is Washington, D.C., and that is called your British government. It's not American government. It's British government under Title28USC3002. And this is the one thing that people need to start realizing what these things mean. Because, like I said, when you get kidnapped and held for ransom, Public Law 109-162, and this was acted in the 109th Congress. So when you get strip searched, that is called raping you. And they know this. And that is the one thing that you have to look up this. So even violence against women, it's a federal crime because the government agencies and the service programs, it comes down to that they don't have these legal rights. And remember, the legal rights is called the Roman Catholic Church, the structure of the Bible, and that is the British government. And that follows under Romans law, and that follows under the whole structure of Title 18, and there's a lot of stuff in that. And that is the other point, is realizing that when you go into these courtrooms, you have to verify if the judge is a judge. You have to confirm if the judge has an oath of servitude. See, these are your responsibility. And see, that's where people say, oh, I don't have to do that. And it's like, you're missing the point. You do have to file your rights. People say, well, why should I file my rights? Well, how do you know if you're lawful or legal? And I support shipping out immigrants all the time. I literally support shipping out immigrants. Because under federal law, immigrants don't have a right in the United States to 48 states. The United States is not 51 states, because Alaska, Hawaii are not part of the United States Incorporated. They are part of the United States Incorporated, but not part of We the People. And Alaska is no man's land. Hawaii is still run by the Vatican, and so is Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, when you do pay your income tax or your federal taxes or anything, goes to Washington, or goes to the Queen of England and gets divided with the Queen and the Vatican churches. And so when you step out of the movie and you start putting these things together and you realize what's going on around you, and see, and that's the other point too, is that they don't like it when you're filing these paperwork, because, it's like I had one cop that told me, oh, well, we go by case. So in other words, if you want to have your rights, you have to sue us and win in court, because they're not acting on your rights anymore, because they make money off of you. And that's the one thing, that money is more important than your life. Their jobs, their pensions are more important than your life. And people got to start accepting this structure, that their income is more important than your life. They don't give a shit. I call, I got the ambulance out here because I can't breathe. And next thing you know, I got a sheriff out here, and he's running around with an M15. It's like, what the fuck is he running around with an M15? And he's trespassing on my property. I only called for the ambulance. I didn't call for him. But he's running around with an M15, so I got to call into the sheriff's department. I'll be calling the sheriff Monday, and I want to see their policy. Because he's telling me, oh, well, it's policy that we come out with M15s now. And so it's like, I want to see your policy, because the one thing you got to remember, your elected and public officials will lie to you because they want to rape you for your money. They don't care for your children. They want to rape you. They like raping because it makes them money. Because when you get raped and when the children get raped, it's psychological warfare on them. It's money. And that's where people have got to start waking up to the real truth. Because these people are making an income off of you on your birth certificate strawman account. And people will say, oh, that doesn't work that way. Yes, it does, folks. So, like I said, Public Law 109-162, and it's the 109th Congress. And I do, challenge you guys to read this stuff. And it's Women Against Violence Against Women. This is violence against Native Americans. So when you get into this and you start reading this stuff, and it even has violence with men, because when you're arrested in strip shirts, that's rape. And that's a charge you can file on the public servant. And that's the one thing you want to do is charge these private contractors rape charges. You know, under Article 4, Section 1, full faith and credit shall be granted by every state. And that means when it comes down to it, under House Resolution 192, your stuff was already paid for unless you committed a murder or assault, some serious crime or property damage. Otherwise, statute, codes, and administrative rules, they're already paid under 192. That's how they make their income. But what they do is that you pay them, and then they go in and they write it off of the taxes at the end of the year. And then the income comes in, that's one. Then they write it off, and then they report it. So they're writing it off 3 times, so they're getting 3 times the money every time anything's paid. And they know it. Of course, they're going to lie to you and say, oh, that's not true. We all seen it. You know, and that's the point, that you need to have your evidence in your hands. And that court case comes down is Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, 371, and that was 1942, and that even comes into the Clearfield documents. And so that's what the Clearfield document is, and I want to get into a little bit of that. Because, like I said, these things do matter, and when you file your criminal charges, you know, I talk to people all the time, and they're like, and I say, we got to file criminal charges. Oh, I just write their reports and I send it in. And I said, no wonder nobody's getting anything, because you have to write the criminal charges, because the only way criminal charges could be filed by law and by statute, codes, and administrative rule, which I got to find that, I had that earlier, states completely that a man and a woman, living man and woman from the United States, unincorporated, native, are the only ones who file charges. The district attorney cannot file charges. State attorney general cannot file charges. Police departments can't file charges. It's a criminal act if they do. And I brought that up and read that up many times, and it is, you know. And that's the one thing, is that I always love it when people say, and I've talked to people this week, and they're talking persons. And I said, what is a person? Oh, and they're trying to explain it to me, and I'm like, no, that's not a person. A person is an inanimate object. It doesn't exist. So when you talk about person, you're saying you don't exist, or what the conversation you're having doesn't exist. That's why it's so apparently to say man and woman or child, is knowing what the circumstances are. And even that comes under Title 4 of the Social Security Act. And so this is the things that people need to really comprehend and read these things and get these things, because if you don't file for your rights, you have no rights. And that means you have to clarify your rights in the corporation. And we got to remember, the corporation is the city, county, and state. That's why when you do file your rights, you always want to file it with that. And also, too, always include a Freedom of Information Act with it. Because you want to send that, and all Freedom of Information Acts, you want to make sure you send to Washington, D.C. under law, under their law, statute, codes, and administrative rule, because the only laws in the United States is called the Constitution and the native treaties. One backs up the other, and without both of those two instruments, we don't have rights. You don't have rights. The Bible gives you no rights. You know, and I always love it when people try to tell me about the Bible. They give you rights. They do this. It does not. The Bible, read the Bible. It gives you no rights. You know, and then some people have been successful where they've got to take their Bible in court, you know, and they told the judge this is what the Bible says. Sometimes the judge will agree, but a lot of times the judge just doesn't give a shit because he wants the money. Because every time that he wins a court case, that percentage goes into his retirement fund. So when he retires after so many years, he's got that in a pension fund, and that interest on those accounts go to the judge. And when people say these judges don't make much, these judges on retirement make $300 to several $1 million a year. So you got to realize that these things do, and it's all about the insurance and stock bonds. And like I said, your birth certificate is an insurance bond. I had fun when I was in the hospital because the nurses and everybody know me, you know, so I get into the birth certificate with people. A couple of nurses didn't know it, but majority of them, they all know it. They, you know, they all we've talked about it openly because there's some people in the hospitals that are not afraid to express it because they're caught in the middle, And so, I had one of the nurses asked me about, I heard you could claim your kid, and so I explained to her and gave her the website and how to do it because we do have that on new.org and trackers. Click on where it says own your child, and that is the one thing that explain it because I don't have the law in front of me. But you look at the law under ORS administrative rule, and it states in it that you have 30 days, technically, is what they say, to register your kid or claim your kid, own your child, because your child is your manufacturer state of origin, your birthright. And then the other point is after 45 days, the state claims it if you didn't claim it, and that's called abandoned property, and that's called a vessel. So, and then when you get into Homeland Security, this is the other point that you're looking at this because the Federal ID Act that they're going is, read it. People don't read this stuff. They just follow suit and they just think that I have to do this, I have to do that, when you don't. And then the other point, too, is that you always ask them for, what is that called? A conflict of interest statement. And that means you ask for a conflict of interest statement for everything. I don't care if it's a traffic ticket or whatever, because the cop, the lawyer, the judge, they all work for themselves. So that's the one thing you got to realize, that these people work for themselves. So in 1935, the Supreme Court ruled that Congress cannot constitutionally delegate any powers to any group, any other groups. Amendments, statutes, amendments in statutes. The power is not delegated to the United States by a constitution, nor prohibited by the states or reserved to the states, respectively. The people are the ones who control and own the states. The people are the governing power of our structure. Now, you'll have elected and public employees say, well, I'm the law, like cops always do. And I had a cop tell me that recently. I'm the law. And I said, okay, if you're the law, I need your card so I can sue you because you're liable. And that's the one thing you got to realize, that your public employees are liable and you could sue them personally. Okay? But you do not do a class action suit, because you do a class action suit, they throw one out, all of them are thrown out. That's why you always do an individuals on these suits, and then that way, let's say one wins, then the other ones have to follow. So that's what I'm saying is that, and it goes to this structure where the 1935 Supreme Court ruled that Congress cannot constitutionally delegate its powers. This goes back to reference page 16, 8. Okay, this goes to the Rothschild Bank of London, England, Warburg Bank of Warburgs, and this is the Rothschilds banking in Berlin. See, you got to realize the British government and Nazi Germany are one and the same. People say, oh, no, Ed, and it's like the banks are in England and the banks are in Germany, and they're controlling you. And that's even part of the Lehman Brothers, and that is structured out of New York City, and part of that is out of Paris. So it's like really comprehending how these things and what the federal government is. The federal government is the British government. So when you type in federal government, you always see it comes up British government. And that's the contracts that we have. And that even goes back to 1866 with the Civil War, because when the lawyers' adoption program came in August 21, 1871, when lawyers became, they are British auxiliary registry to the King and Queen of England. And lawyers will tell you, oh, no, we're not their lawyers. Remember, lawyers and attorneys, their job is to lie. That's what they get paid to. So the bankers in this structure are controlling us. And this goes to the point where it's like when you go into the hospital. I was in there, and they come in this morning. We want to get you to sign these papers. I said, I'm under duress. You wouldn't want me to commit a crime, would you? So then they come back in. They're trying to hound me. So I said, okay, I have this sheet that we have, and so I have a printout with it. So I autographed it, put my thumbprint on it, and I said, "Here you go." And they said, "Oh, that's fine, Mr. Johnson. You just have a good day." They didn't want to go that direction because then that way they had to put everything under 192, which is already in my files. But that's the point. You want to file your 192 if you're a lawful bloodline native. Immigrants cannot do it. It's a federal crime. Immigrants have no rights in this country at all, even to food. And that's law. And, we've read that, and I've got it posted out, and I've posted it quite regularly. Except for last week, I got 2 more days or 3 more days of being booted off of Facebook. I mean, I can't even put a happy face up or like. I mean, they 100% booted me off. So, I mean, it's like, I don't know, and I'm going through my friends list because I'm going to start deleting people. Because anybody that has, put a complaint on me on Facebook, I'm deleting them, period. Because I don't have time to waste with these idiots that are monitoring the structure for their own personal financial gain. And you got a lot of people. It's like the other people that are out there on Facebook, too, that are doing 192. I've asked them, prove it. Prove to me. And I actually found the law on 192, how you could write it off. And I got to find it again because when I was putting all that together, my computer crashed and lost everything. Isn't that interesting how the computer has crashed on some of these things? Even me and Dave were writing. We watched the computer as we're writing. We're watching our typing orders getting erased, and then the computer crashes. So I mean, and then people say, "Oh, they don't follow you. They don't do this." And it's amazing how many people lie to their children. You lie to the children about Easter, Halloween. I mean, all these holidays that we're claiming are religious holidays. And some of them are religious holidays, but it goes back to a different structure. And today everybody wants to go by, a religion of the so-called book called the Bible. Well, you could take that and go back to England because we used to have festivals, winter, summer, and fall. So it's like going back in history and looking at the facts compared to what we're living today. That's the whole point. And everybody wants to live under the corporation, and so you're not free. So it's like when Woodrow Wilson passed the 1913 Act. Okay, this is part of the Bankruptcy Act that was started before the Bankruptcy Act of 1933. And so this is the one thing that when you come down and look at these history facts and start putting these together and step out and you start putting these pages together like I do, and you start outlining them, how this works and how that works, and you can read it. Down the whole circumstances of what the meanings are. And that's the point that we want to make sure we do that. Now, I always have fun with the American Civil Liberties Union because I've got letters from them where the cops tried to murder me, and I got YouTube videos and what the whole structure is. And American Civil Liberties Union, remember, they're lawyers, and they if it wasn't for murder, rape, rob, and murder, they wouldn't have a job. You got to remember, these people don't care about you. See, that's the point. And everybody keeps going, well, these people have compassion and they want to do right. Who's right? Who are they doing right for? They're not doing right for you because they're not worried about your children. They don't care about you. And then the American Civil Liberties Union right now is trying to protect immigrants' rights and do all this shit. Immigrants don't have a goddamn right in this country. And the ACLU, they couldn't tell the truth because if they told the truth, they would lose money. I mean, it's like the ALCUs put this article together that the federal judge declares policing for profits. That's what your cops do. That's your property taxes, your fines, all your administrative rule stuff. That's what I'm saying. File under the structure of a nonprofit agency and file it in Washington, D.C., because that's called theft of taxes. And there is that in their structure. So they put this up dealing with, judge declares, policy for that. And it came out of New York. And I'm just wondering because I got because the date on this was, after I produced a case in Kansas City, and this is where it comes out, or New Mexico. And because I did one in Kansas City, I did several in New Mexico. And we proved that natives cannot be taxed driving, even transferring hemp or any products of that type of nature. And they don't like it when this comes out with the truth. So, and that's the whole point, is reading these things, comprehending what's there, and knowing what it means. Because remember, you have to let your public employees know what they're doing wrong. That is our job. But like I said, they're going by today. They're making sure that they're going basically by case. They don't want you to have freedom, and that's the point. They don't want you to have freedom, because if you had freedom, they couldn't make an income. Because you got to remember, it's called rape, rob, and pillage. And so that's the whole point, is that when you sit there and, not giving them the rights, they get upset. So what's so disturbing is that the American Civil Liberties Union is not American. It's foreign, and they want to keep the immigration coming in, because with the immigration, they get the birth certificates written up, and so they get a percentage. So anytime a man or woman dies, they divide that money up on the birth certificate fund. That's a fact. It doesn't go back to the people where it's supposed to go. And that's the one thing that, people don't comprehend that. And so on some of this stuff, Rob Ryder, I don't know if you folks have ever heard Rob Ryder. He does a YouTube channel. Well, he's got a lot of this stuff on YouTube, walking you through the circumstances of these rights. I've talked to Rob many times over the years, and he knows it. And then the other point is the American Law Club. And that's the other one. See, we got even lawyers out there that are doing some things of the right thing. And that's the point. Not all of them are doing it. Some are doing it. So, and that's the one thing, that police department have no constitutional oath. And also, too, remember, policy officers are not lawyers, so they can't discuss the case. They can't sit there and go, well, I'm going to give you this traffic ticket, and you're going to say, so you're practicing law without a license. Remember, practicing law without a license affects them, not you. And that is the whole point about citizen regulations, is that you got to realize, even in the Black Law Dictionary, 5th edition, page 1156, says it. This regulates the structure. So, and that's the point. You want to look at these things, even though the Black Law Dictionary was written as a joke and it was written in the 13th century, but people don't realize what that means. When they write these books and they do all this stuff in England, and you think that you're supposed to go through it, are you an American or not? So that's the one thing that, I always love these people that are sitting out there going, oh, the Queen of England. Those ain't Americans. The Queen ain't our queen. The Queen has nothing to do with their country. She raped and robbed and murdered the native people. She still does that today. They've been doing that for hundreds of years. And people go, oh, God. And I always say, and people go, Ed, quit being hard on God. But like I said, who's God? What God? Why is there a God? I mean, if rape, robbing, and pillaging, is that what you're dealing? And people say, well, that's not me. I don't do that. That's bullshit. Because you endorse it if you're going along with that. So in 1933, the structure, when FDR put the birth certificates in place, they were valued at $630,000 each. And that was to pay off the British debt that the British debt owes the American natives. And we do have that. And if you really read the financial debts, what's going on, the banks owe the natives the money. And so then you always see this thing, and it always gets to me, well, we need to start doing this debt for the blacks, the slaves. Excuse you. Indians were here before the blacks when it came down to the ones that were brought over from England. Of course, we had colored men and women going back to the 14th century here. And that's been proven in documents. So it's like, which side, whose side, what side do people want to believe? So under House Resolution 192, which eventually I want to get a certified copy. I'm still trying to work on that one because we get a certified copy. Excuse me. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, a certified copy. I'm trying to get that done by one of the senators or congressmen. There is a certified copy by Congress online. But if we could get an updated one by a congressman, Then that way we could file on 192 on your water, electricity bill, and stuff like that. And so you comprehend that the state, and I always love when people say, "Oh, well, I'm a national." Well, and the term, this is State versus Manual, 20 NC 122. The term citizen or national of the United States is subject to all the administrative rules. So if you're a citizen or a national, you're taking a title of nobility, and that's part of Executive Order 2040. So when you start doing this, and this is like the point is bringing up these administrative rules, so that way you're filing the administrative rules back to them that they have to abide. And see, most of the time they're not abiding by their own administrative rules, so that's where you have to file the charges and start suing them. And then under the structure of the Paper Reduction Act, that's what we're talking about. Because when they did the Paper Reduction Act, we cut more trees down for paper after the Paper Reduction Act than we do anyway. Because, every time you go in a store, what do you want a receipt? Everybody wants a receipt. So, and then let's not forget, the federal British corporation is, 28 USC. I had that number. I thought it was 18, but it's 28 USC 3002. And under that, the government is the British corporations, city, county, states. And so it does make a difference when you start comprehending and put this together. That's why I always recommend the movie Interstate 60, because people need to watch that. And then the other point of Section 16, adoption. This is the one thing. Section 16 is dealing with the Constitution and rights. And so this is the one thing when you do read these things, and that's Rule 16. If you type in Rule 16, you'll come up with that, and that's Section 16.1. And this is where some of this stuff explains this facts to you. And it's like even going, people say adoption. In Indian treaties, this is the one thing that people got to realize, that the Indian treaties are the law of the land. And it even says that in the Supreme Court, because they are the law of the land. The treaties supersede back up the Constitution, and the Constitution makes the treaties bound and certified. And that's the one thing. So natives are not to pay taxes. And I was talking to Joe, the tax collector for the state of, or county of Lincoln, and I said, and then we got in this argument, and he's going, basically, we're going to come kill you. That's what he said to me on the phone. And I said, well, yeah, okay. I said, but isn't it a fact natives are not to pay taxes at all? And he's going, and I'm like, well, is it a fact? He goes, well, yeah, natives ain't supposed to pay taxes, so why are you murdering people for taxes when, they're native and they prove it? And so that is the one thing, that natives are exempt from all taxes. And not only that, in the Treaty of 1846 and the mission of 1859, the Corporation of Oregon, I sent that out, and that even says that, we're exempt from state and federal income tax. And so this is the one thing that just gets to me. And then you go back to the people, when people are compelled to pay taxes, that comes under the Fifth Amendment. Because the Fifth Amendment, you don't have to pay taxes. You don't have to give your rights over. But they come after you with gun points to do this, and then they want to put you in fear. And, everybody lives in fear. Like I said, I was going through this when I get going in the ambulance last night, and then one of the sheriff deputies come out, and, with the only one there, and he's got a, M15, or M16, And it's like, what the hell is he tapping around an M16? So where am I classified as? And it was like, and I swear this cop was one of the cops that robbed my house. Can't explain it, but I just had that feeling real bad. I just felt it. He was one involved. So, and then it was in the mid-1600s, the Crown of England established a crown, and that is your bar association. It's called International Bar Association, and it allows barristers and lawyers. And remember, lawyers and attorneys are one and the same. I argue with people all the time that says, "Oh, lawyers are not an attorney." They are. Look at the even Bouvier dictionary says they're liars. So, and that's the point, that these men and women are liars. So you got to realize that. And so it's like, and we're dealing with the recall in Oregon of a governor called Kate Brown. Okay, and by the Constitution, she can't even be in office because she was born in Spain. And I've argued with that with a lot of people, and they say, well, it's corporations. She could do what she wants. Well, under this is the Oregon State Constitution. This is the one thing that gets to me. This is out of the Blue Book, that, it has to be a natural, and they use the old point of born citizen. But see, and you got to remember, with citizen and national, they're not natives, they're not part of this country. But it says 30 years, and it says that you have to be born in this country of 48 states. You cannot be born in a foreign country and come here and be in office. That's why all these people are panicking right now with Trump going after these people and the Democrats in office, because the Muslims and all these people are in office in our country. Even, Mexicans that came from Mexico that, are, I've talked to a couple of Congressmen, aides, and this last week I was hung up 4 times, because I'm asking them, now, how many years and how many generations has this senator been in this country? And I said, well, that affects the law, and so I'm quoting them the law, and so I'm asking them how many generations, and what do? They just hang up on the phone. See, they know it. They lie. They know it. But see, they count on people being uneducated and stupid. So when you claim a title of nobility, that means you're not native. You're not an American. People say, oh, I could be an American with a title. No, you can't. Because when you're taking the title of nobility, that means you're not a native at all. And that says, well, the title of nobility is under the king or prince of a foreign state. And your foreign state is your Secretary of State, Department of Secretary of Interior, and that is the structure where everybody gets registered of the birth certificate in that structure, and that's why if you don't claim that birth certificate of your child, they get to own it. So anyhow, and like I said, I'm going to make it a little short tonight because my deal, so we're going to open the floor, and then some of this stuff I'll be putting up on the YouTube video afterwards so people could do that. And just remember, I'm going to be putting up the structure with Admiralty laws from the Black Law Dictionary. So that's what, the deal, and we've got the Black Law Dictionary. We have the UCC codes on maritime law that we'll get that up, stating that what the maritime law is. But judges do not enforce statute codes. That's what they're claiming. So when you go to these courts, what are they forcing you to obey to? That's why you have to file a Freedom of Information Act on them, and you want to make sure you're filing a conflict of interest, and you want to ask these public servants to prove their filing and their bond registry. Because every judge, every clerk, every police officer, anybody who's any public servant has to have a bond registry. So, and you always want to get their bond structure, always. So with that, why don't we open up the floor, and we'll see what anybody's got anything to add.
All participants are unmuted.
Nobody want to speak up?
Hey, Ed?
Yes.
You just send it to the DOJ and requesting for their bond or their see if they registered as a foreign agent.
Yeah.
You don't send it to any certain department of the DOJ?
No, you just send it to you want to send it to the Department of Justice, and then you want to send it to the administration of the Department of Justice, and then you want to file that in Washington, D.C. under the Foreign Registration Act.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that they get notified of what's going on. Because, I mean, that's the one thing. I do have a case number of what I filed on the city of Toledo, and I'm finishing that one up. And so, I mean, I know that, they're panicking because, like, when I told the mayor I was going after the mayor, oh, God, when I ended up in ICU in August, I was in August 18th, 19th, 20, 21st, or it was 19th through the 21st, 22nd, I was in ICU. And I was informed my house was being robbed by the police department, so I literally unhooked myself, called a cab, and came home, and it was true. The Toledo Police Department with a sheriff deputy raided my house and stole all my court papers, and so because they knew that my court papers and what I filed, there was no way I could lose, and that means 30 people would end up probably in federal prison. So, and that's the main thing is you want to make sure that everybody's included. And also, too, I always do this is I include it to the local media and talk show hosts. Because when they try to do this stuff, I want to make sure they got it because, they can lie to their public, but if they have it and somebody nails them on it, then they're the ones who are liability. Go ahead. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, that was all I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay. And then Norton and Shelby County, 118 U.S. 425, 1866. An unconstitutional act is not law, confers to no rights, imposes no duties, affords no protection. Remember, elected and public employees have no rights to do what they're doing. They have no exoneration, and people say, oh, yes, they can do whatever they want, and they have protection, and that's not true. It's filing the right court cases with your instruments, and then that way you have evidence to back it up. And that's the one thing is the constitutional right, that's Miller versus United States, 230, and this is one I'm filing with my case, on property taxes. A claim exercised the Constitution, no right cannot be converted into a crime. So when it comes down to the structures that we have with the British government going back to each state, before each state became even a corporation, we're not to pay taxes and all that. So it's all in the treaties. So that's why I say read your treaties read the native treaties because it means a lot because if you're 5 more generation, you're native. That's even by the Supreme Court, and that's by the 14th Amendment. And I know we have it. I don't know if we've had the time to get that up yet, but I've been posting it all over Facebook. But like I said, I've been bounced from Facebook again. I can't post anything for another 3 days. I mean, literally, I can't even put a happy face or anything. First time I've actually been 100% blocked from anything on Facebook. So I got, like I said, I'm going through my Facebook structure, and I'll be eliminating people out of it that I feel that are not in our best interest or my best interest. And I do that every time I get somebody puts a bad deal on my deal. I eliminate them because, you got people that are out there against you. It's just simple. So anyhow, anybody else would like to add anything else? Okay. So just remember in your electronic communications, that is 18 U.S.C. 25102521, and that is your rights of electronic protection of your emails and that stuff. So with that, and that even has fines up to $100,000 per issue. So with that, we'll call it a night, and you all have a good evening, and we'll get some more posted up, and I'll post some stuff on the YouTube channel later on tonight so people can go over some of the stuff that I brought up. So may the Great Spirit look over you. May Mother, the Creator, and the Creator bless you and look over you and always protect yourself.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. It is kind of a shorter show tonight, but Ed, we got it. We got to take care of Ed. He tried to follow the Grinch and had his heart grow bigger, but it just didn't work out right.
Hey, how do we find this YouTube channel?
Our YouTube channel is Oregon Trackers on YouTube.
Thank you.
And then also, too, the website is new.oregontrackers, and that has all the legal, lawful, and it even shows you how to own your child, your bloodline. And if you have any questions on that, you can always get a hold of me or put a comment up on YouTube to get contact, and I'll be more than happy to get the people that, the information on the laws and statutes and the verses of real laws versus statute codes and administrative rules of administration of a corporation. And just remember, in the nonprofit structure, your mayor and your city council, your mayor is the board member, your city council are the CEOs, and they are lawfully bounded by law for their stocks and bonds and their homes, because they are claiming that they are your master, and so they are liable to produce that paperwork to prove it. So, I mean, it just comes down to that simple. And that'll be in the affidavit that I'll have, and then I'll probably end up breaking it down because it's 70 pages long. And so we'll have to do probably next week. We'll break that down and put it all over the YouTube channel so people can see what it is with all the laws, administrative rules, and how it works for the mayor, city council. It even affects the governor, because the governor of each state is liable with their assets and their homes, for they're the administrator to the corporation. And these people say, oh, no, we're not. Well, I've got the laws. I've got the federal laws. I have their own administrative rules that they are. So, and that's the one thing, that people do not file these things correctly, and they do not put this information in their filings, and that's why they wrote it, we quote it. It's so important to put their words in it. Let their words speak. So, anyhow, anybody else? And if not, we'll call it an evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, we'll just say goodnight and catch you next week. And go ahead and remember this. This is all educational purposes only. We do not take liability for any information that you choose to use. Whatever you use from the information we provide, you are responsible and liable for your own actions. We are not responsible or liable for any of your actions. And for YouTube itself, we are an educational channel, so there's no political, uh, there's no monetary, there's nothing that they should be. They should even think about shutting this channel down, but they have been shutting a lot of channels down. So we again say,
Yeah, well, a lot of the channels are running advertising on their channels and stuff under corporation rules, and that's what people don't get. When you're an educational channel, they consider you a nonprofit agency, so when you're running advertising, that's a profit. So that's one of the reasons why they do it. They're doing that under federal law. And people say, they don't have a right to do that. They can't shut me down. Yes, they did, because they can, because you're advertising a product and you're not education, because education is not for an income.
and
So
there you have it. So good night, everybody, and we'll catch you again next week.